Jesus freak here. I was surprised to find this. A friend of mine was working on editing a translation she was doing. Well, she wasn't really doing the translation, she was editing it. Anyway, she was asking about the phrase agree to disagree. And this came up. The Wikipedia page on agree to disagree. And I thought this was interesting. I'm going to read the beginning of the origin section here. The phrase agree to disagree appeared in print in its modern meaning in 1770 when, at the death of George Whitefield, John Wesley wrote a memorial sermon which acknowledged but downplayed the two men's doctrinal differences. Wesley was an Arminian and Whitefield was Calvinist. Both of them, of course, Reformed, but in different ways. There are many doctrines of a less essential nature. In these we may think and let think. We may agree to disagree. But meantime, let us hold fast the essentials. Wesley enclosed the phrase in quotation marks, and in a subsequent letter to his brother Charles, attributed it to Whitefield, presumably George Whitefield. If you agree with me, well, if not, we can, as Mr. Whitefield used to say, agree to disagree. Whitefield had used it in a letter as early as June 29, 1750. After all, those who will live in peace must agree to disagree in many things with their fellow laborers, and not let little things part or disunite them. And often I find myself with other believers agreeing to disagree with them. And it's interesting that a lot of the time this is the same exact debate that it was with the Wesleys and Whitefield. I know a lot of people who watch my channel also watch Pastor Brett's channel. And what few theological differences we have, these are things that we mostly agree to disagree on. But they are literally the same exact points because, like I said, my beliefs are very much in a Wesleyan mold, while he's more traditionally Reformed. And, of course, yeah, we will disagree, because we're humans. And I think even Paul said, sometimes it's more important to agree to disagree. For example, when in Romans 14:1 he says, "Him that is weak in the faith receive ye, but not to doubtful disputations." And he basically says, oh, you might not believe exactly the same thing, but it's not really always that important. There's certain things that, some of our beliefs are the hills we're willing to die on. But a lot of them are not. And for what it's worth, you know, sometimes they'll wind up believing more or less the same. Sometimes they will agree eventually. If they do, hey, that's a bonus. More recently, Pastor Brett has come to my conclusions regarding Psalm 12 and regarding the Kama Johannian. These used to be sticking points, but stuff we had agreed to disagree on. And that's probably why, he's more willing to use this Bible where for a while there he'd almost not be caught dead with any translation but this one. This is of course the King James. This of course 95 NASB, which he's gone back and forth a few times. When I first met him, one of the Bibles he usually carried around was an NASB 95. And of course, I usually carried around King James, which this is too a matter of where I agree to disagree with a lot of believers, because I don't believe that the King James is a better translation necessarily. Just that using it as one's main translation, as a sort of common translation, avoids a lot of the issues that you have when different people using different translations. And I've said, if I did have to use a translation that was a modern translation and didn't have these and thous all over the place, yeah, I'd probably use a NASB 95. It wouldn't be my necessary preference, but I wouldn't have a problem using it if I had to. Jesus freak out.